Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video is going to be a little bit of fun. We're going to talk about 5 new factions or sub-factions or parts of an army that we could see come from existing aesthetics that already exist within many of the forces in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. This may be that they actually have models, or there's some narrative, or there's even items and enhancements that come around them, like special artifacts or different mount traits, etc. that come from all of these that we could use as maybe an idea to spur on something new as a faction. Now, some of these may be more commonly known, and I'm pretty sure most people can guess one of them that I'm going to mention in the video, knowing what I like. But with that all said, I think this would be interesting to sort of talk about the ones that we've already seen parts of that can become more major parts within the armies, or indeed become armies on their own right, taking out something of a battle tome, or indeed adding a new sort of major player. So much like we've seen the Cruel Boys added as an entire new layer to Orc War Clans, we could see many of these things added to a new layer to the particular battle tome that they come from. With that said, we're going to look at 5 different things that we'd like to see, and I'd love to hear 5 different things you would all like to see, or indeed anything you would like to see coming from existing factions. We're not going to be talking about brand new factions, things that don't exist at all model-wise or in the narrative at the moment, but we're going to talk about some ones that I think are really fun to have a chat about. So with that said, let's get cracking on and let's go through our list of 5, and like I said, leave your comments down below of what you would like to see for some factions in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Number 1, the Kanathi. Now, this is the one I obviously was talking about. Everyone knows that I love Wood Elves, I love the Kanathi, and I want this as an army more than anything in the game. This is my number 1 on the list without a doubt, but they are really interesting aesthetic. Obviously adding a more mortal side to the Sylvaneth, a more human-like side, or in some cases the bestial side. We've seen different versions of Kanathi in different games. So obviously with Warhammer Underworlds, this was the first look at what we call Kanathi, and we saw Escape's Wild Hunt, these bestial Kurnoth worshippers. Now they still had the Lamentiri inside them, much the same as we have with the Tree Revenants and all of that. So that's something really interesting to sort of note about what and who they are. They've still got that little like soul pod within them, which is interesting on like many fronts of like, well, what are these creatures? What are they just more bestial versions of the Tree Revenants and Spite Revenants that we see? More beast and elf rather than tree and elf. But also, we had the Kalathis, the Exile, added in Cursed City, and she is just a proper elf. Now, she also has a Lamentiri on her chest as well, but she's much more traditional wood elf style of what we see. So, do we perhaps have these more mortal-like elves and these more bestial ones? And let's not forget, Kurnoth Hunters, I guess, are also members of Kurnoth, or worshippers of Kurnoth as well, so we can see them sort of add a bit to the aesthetic, so we can see this sort of range of Kurnoth units added to an army. With that said, I do think we'll probably see them added to Sylvaneth rather than become their own army. Kurnoth is obviously tied to Alariel, he's the consort king. It'll be really interesting to sort of see if we get a Kurnothi army, what will start to expand, and will we get more bestial, will we get more, I guess, of these normal sort of looking wood elves, and will we indeed see the Wanderers turned into Kanathi? Will we see those units sort of pour over into the Sylvaneth book? Number 2, Oproids. Now this is another one that I'm really excited for. I absolutely loved the Ogroid Thaumaturge when he came out. I thought he was a really cool addition to the Tzeentch range. And then when we got the Ogroid Myrmidon, he is without a doubt one of my favourite Age of Sigmar models we've ever seen. He is so cool. Now, combining the two, I know they're both from Slaves to Darkness and from Tzeentch, but I really do think we've got an interesting aesthetic to either add another layer to Slaves to Darkness as a whole, giving us an Ogroid style army to have a really monstrous infantry heavy army, because it is something that we lost in the current sort of world. We no longer have like Chaos Trolls and Chaos Ogres, so we definitely lost that monstrous infantry sort of style of Chaos army that was possible. But also, they could really stand up on their own as a entirely new faction of their own. I think there's enough there if you have some heroes, some units of different variations, and indeed some sort of monsters to have a monstrous style chaos army, which is something we sort of do lack. We don't really have that monstrous infantry style army. We've got monstrous infantry armies obviously for destruction in the form of ogres, and then in death we've got some sort of close, I guess, styles with some of the Flesh Eater Corp builds, and in order we've got Stormcast Eternals as a more sort of larger unit size, and also more monstrous units in the form of, say, the Daughters of Cain Malusai faction, it could be a really interesting look, I think, having these larger models of the Oproids as a full faction within Chaos. Then we have the Order of Azir. This is another one that's definitely a popular thing that people definitely want to see more of. We've obviously seen Duralia and Galen Van Denst come in Broken Realms, and then obviously Jelson Darroch came out in Cursed City. This is another sort of aesthetic that we've got Cities of Sigmar, we've got these, we've got the Flagellants that are already there with their current sort of, I guess, keyword, not quite tying up, but definitely should at some point. The Devoted of Sigmar, we obviously had the Warrior Priest and the Witch Hunter be part of that faction already before. This is definitely an aesthetic I'd love to see more of. The Vampire Hunters, the Witch Hunters, and all the other sort of hunters that we've seen. They're a great aesthetic, something really cool that adds a little bit of an element to Cities of Sigmar that it doesn't currently have. If we're going to see any part of Cities of Sigmar expanded on in the future, I think it is most certainly going to be our Order of Azir, friends. There's just so much to do with that. I mean, look at these cool models. You've got the cool sniper stake gun with his giant hammer. You've got the crossbow, the pistol, and flame, greatsword wielding Galen. There's a lot you can do with these models. You could definitely make some units of some initiates and stuff like that to go around with them. Obviously, having the Flagellants as some sort of crazed lunatics that go out bringing people for them to put down. And you could also add in priests as well. I think it's just a great sort of thing you can add to Cities of Sigmar and something they don't have at current. Number 4, the Firebellies. Now, we obviously only have a single miniature for the Firebellies, but I really do think he's an interesting aesthetic enough to warrant pushing a whole line of ogres after this miniature. We've got the Mongol-inspired Gutbusters, which are definitely starting to take more of that look, especially with the latest Tyrant model that came out for ogres. And of course, we've got the Beastclaw Raiders, the Frost ogres that are hunted or haunted or potentially blessed by the gods of winter that they once freed. The Firebellies for me are an interesting sort of aesthetic. They definitely would give us a sort of fire and ice feel to the army, but also their shamanistic and tribal sort of look, I think, adds something different that we don't see. We've got the more warrior-like and we've got the more monster-like, but what happens if we get something that is more magical and more tribalistic inspired? Generally, this would be the army that's probably most like Bone Splitters or like the Spiderfang Grots, that more sort of feral style of that destruction force that we have, which is a really cool aesthetic. Like, I think you push deep into the tribal aspect. You have tribal warriors. You can definitely go with like some spear throwers and some sort of giant wooden shields and spears or javelins in them. And having some other sort of, you know, like bone or stone shaped weapons like we do see here with his giant hammer. And adding in a lot of fire sort of aesthetic. You could have fire throwers or fire slingers and stuff like that for the army. And even some weird sort of fire beasts potentially. Could be a really cool aesthetic to follow in and have a whole ogre line, because he is an absolutely fantastic miniature. Now, this last one's going to be an interesting one, and maybe one that people aren't as familiar with some of the other things. This is Zombiecorp. Now, Zombiecorp in the narrative is a rival faction to the Grunstock. Grunstock obviously making the Grunstock Gunhauler, the Thunderers, and some other units across the army, as well as some upgrades. Zombiecorp is actually one of the upgrades we can take for the Arcanal Ironclads. It's called the Dealbreaker. Now, this is apparently a rival sort of faction to them, an up-and-coming sort of guild that's having a lot of influence in the Kharadron Overlord society. Now, their upgrade is actually for a battle ram. Now, this for me sounds like maybe this is a close combat-inspired upgrade system, or a guild that likes doing some upgrades in combat. So could this be where maybe we see something like Kharadron Overlord Dreadnoughts or something like that, or giant bigger battle suits added to the army? This could be a really cool addition, I think. Adding some sort of close combat elements to Kharadron Overlords in the form of like some Aether-powered mech suits could be really fun. Whether that be for characters or for units, could be a really interesting sort of aesthetic to go down the line with for Kharadron Overlords. With that all said, though, these are just 5 ideas that we've had talking about some things we'd maybe like to see of some aesthetics. What are some current aesthetics you'd like to see improved on in the narrative or lore and given and added to current armies available to in Warhammer Age of Sigmar? Let us know down in the comments below. Well, that's the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, drop us a comment down below and let us know what you enjoyed about the video. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our fine little community here at Cinderful Gaming, you can do so by joining our Discord server, which is linked down in the video's description. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel and get your name up on the screen like all these fantastic people do, you can do so by supporting us either on Patreon or YouTube members. As a special thanks to all our Patreon and YouTube members, we'd love to give them a shout out. So a shout out to our Patreons: Christian Weir, James Soren, Greenskins Gaming, AJC, Kenny Lull, Outer and Shot First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, Anton Nilsson, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, and Dynet226. And a shout out to our YouTube members: Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Chris Wallace, Ronya, Vinny, Lock Lorick, The Johnny84, David Ellsworth, Revenar, Wolfric Nick, Broken Shelf, Adriana Edwards, and Sean Scott. A special thanks as well to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for our channel, and to Xmorphic, who does all the amazing background work for our channel's Discord server as well. Thank you all for watching. Once again, everyone, stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.